listening to Out Late with David. True stories of coming out later in life. And now here's your host, David Cotton.
Welcome to Out Late with David. Today's episode is a little different. I'm the guest, and it's also a reminder that it is never too late to become who you truly are. I recently had the privilege of joining Dean Pullman, founder of Man Flow Yoga and the host of the Better Man podcast, to tell my story of coming out later in life. Dean recognizes that many men, including members of the community he's created, are waking up to deeper truths about themselves. Some are questioning long-held identities. Some are standing at the edge of change. Some are wondering if courage is still available to them. And I remember standing alone in a hotel bathroom years ago, looking in the mirror and whispering words that would change my life forever. In this conversation, we explore what happens when you choose authenticity, even when it disrupts everything you may know. If you're standing at your own edge and asking yourself whether change is possible, or if you need proof that reinvention can lead to a fuller life, I hope this episode gives you that proof. Here's my conversation with Dean Pullman on the Better Man podcast.
Hey guys, it's Dean. Welcome to the Better Man podcast. Today's episode is an interview with David Cotton. He's a life coach and a host of the Out Late with David podcast. He's a retired Air Force Brigadier General who's firmly married to a woman and has 2 kids and came out in his late 50s. And this is an important topic to discuss because it is a phenomenon that is very prevalent, shockingly so, that I've noticed in my own interactions with men within our community, and that has to do with coming out later in life. Specifically, men going through their entire lives as a straight man, married to a woman, and then coming out in their 40s, their 50s, 60s, and even into their 70s. In this conversation, we touch on a variety of topics, including David's experience as well as general experiences of other men coming out late in life, including David's early and his middle life, growing up and having a career in environments where being gay was wrong. Talk about how he experienced gay thoughts throughout his entire life, but he was able to shut them out by having purpose, by being dedicated to his family, and how he actually lived a happy life despite that. We also talk about how he eventually came out to his wife, his family, what their responses were, and how his life has changed since. And also how he completely changed the type of person that he was as a result of coming out. How he used to be introverted and shy, and now he's an extroverted man, deeply interested in discussing other people's challenges and stories. So I think this is a really important conversation to have just because it does highlight a large proportion of our community. And I think that you guys will get a lot out of this. So I hope you enjoy this interview. David comes with a lot of vulnerability, and it's a great conversation to listen to. So I hope it inspires you, and I hope it inspires you to be a better man. Hey guys, it's Dean. Welcome to the Better Man podcast. Today's episode, I have David Cotton here from Out Late. David is a Man Flow Yoga member for a long time now. I have seen his life evolve and change over the last decade significantly, and I'm excited to, one way of describing it. And I'm excited to have David on to tell his story. So thank you for coming.
Well, Dean, it's an honor to be here. You've been part of my transformation long before either of us knew where my life was taking me and your life was taking you.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So where do I start? So I first met David it was probably like 2016, I want to say, maybe 2017.
It was.
Okay. 2016. And you were part of the members area. You were doing the workouts. I remember you as being one of our, at the time, more significant success stories in the sense of coming in at a certain fitness level and starting to improve in those areas. And then, and then starting to delve into other areas. You were working with my trainer, Jesse from Central Athlete, and you started lifting weights. And then you got jacked. And then, so you've been, with Man Flow Yoga for a while. And then I started seeing, I can't remember how I learned about what else was going on. And I keep saying what else was going on and, significant life changes, like it's some mystery. But, you've obviously created a whole thing, a whole community, a whole podcast around it. So I don't know. I'll turn it over to you because my question asking ability is apparently not great today. Kaya, we had to put Kaya down yesterday. So I'm operating at, I would say 65 to 70%. So,
and I'm so sorry to hear that. I can imagine how that must feel. My little guy, Tucker, I took him to boarding today. So he's running around playing with other dogs, but I know that hits heavy. So I'm with you.
Yeah. We knew it was coming, but still.
Mm-hmm.
So you're working out. So
I actually found you before 2016. Yeah. I found you before 2016. I remember watching you on YouTube when I lived in Virginia, and you're out in front of your apartment under, I think, an oak tree, trying to avoid the acorns and bare feet to do your poses before you'd actually started Manflow Yoga like it has grown today into this great enterprise, helping so many people. And we finally connected when I got to Iowa in 2016, became a member, started with DVDs, and realized the effect it was having on me. I thought I was always in shape. I was a runner my whole life, and that's how I used to keep my mental health stable, was running. And as you know, I had a problem with that for a while. So you actually created some, I think, like David running workouts or something for damaged feet for plantar fasciitis, which I really appreciated that. And even hired you for a while to be my coach. And so you coached me remotely on yoga, which was very helpful. Remember, I had my 2 cameras set up so you could see my poses from all angles.
Yes.
I'm kind of detailed, maybe a bit too much.
I'd expect nothing less from a retired brigadier general. So,
So that was part of my fitness journey. And then actually you introduced me to Jesse O'Brien of Central Athlete. And that's when I really got into weight and went from a guy who was almost a 36, 37 inch waist to now I'm 29 or 30. Got down to body fat around 8%. And now it's probably around 12 because can't keep it down there too much. So it really got me focused to realize that for me, my mental health is all around my fitness and my body and how I move and how I wake up each day, because it's the one asset I can control is me, how I think and what I do. And that just changed my perspective and took ownership for my life. And I really, truly believe that having met you and started that fitness journey and built upon what I was already doing, and then Jesse, it gave me the courage to then process who I was with myself. And in the end, in my late 50s, I realized, David, you're a gay man. You've always had these thoughts. You've never done anything with them. You met a beautiful woman, got married, fell in love, had kids, but you live in this conflict all the time that your exercise doesn't resolve. It gave me time to think about it, to do that. But it did give me the courage and the strength to realize that, again, I can control my thoughts and my body of how I move through the world. And it's the one asset that'll keep me going as I live. So let's bring this all together for true mental and physical health.
Yeah. And that's what I meant to say at the beginning, is the one big reason why I wanted to have you on the podcast is because within the Manflow Yoga community, I have heard way more stories than, I imagined I would, from men who were married to women their entire lives. And for some of them, they got to, it seems like some of them were, they figured out relatively early on. Like there were, I think a few of them, like maybe in their 30s and 40s, figured out like, oh, you know what? I'm actually not supposed to be in this relationship. I'd rather be with men. But there's a huge, I found much more of a trend of people in their 60s and in their 70s. So coming out late, like you said, coming out late in life, not coming out middle in life, but coming out much later in life. And it was, I actually not interviewed, but I launched this kind of experimental community called the Engage platform in 2024. I think it ended up not working out, but we did have a pretty significant onboarding questionnaire. And through that, I learned that 10% of the total participants came out in their 60s or 70s, were married to women, and then came out and remarried to men in their late 60s. One guy was 72. when it happened. Like his wife died at 71, and then like the next year he was married to a man. And so I wanted to have you on just to speak to this demographic that is, there's just way more significant, way more out there than I had to make the pun, but way more out there than I thought existed. So, anyways, yeah, that was
and late.
shocking.
We have the podcast now, Out Late with David, and it's primarily men telling their stories of coming out later in life. But late is a relative term. I'm also a life coach, and I have clients and guys I know that came out late 29-ish, 30-ish, up to 80-something. And so late is a relative term on the individual, because even the one that was 30 said, oh, I'm so late in life. I've already done this and this. Late may be in what they think that they are, but the reality is whatever the right time is the right time. There's nothing that's early. There's nothing at late. That's the first thing we work on is you are where you are. You can't change the past. You can accept it. You could grieve it. You could have some sadness, but don't get obsessed about it because you can't change it. It's already past. It's past.
Yeah.
And the future, what am I going to do? I don't want to destroy this family. I don't want to destroy my relationships. There's so much fear that they're stuck in inaction. And so they may be for decades. Like myself, I didn't accept who I was. I had inklings. I mean, now I look back and say, yeah, I was gay from when I was a single digit kid. From the thoughts that I had, but didn't act on them. And so I moved through life with this bundle of thoughts in my head to where the pressure became so great, I had to do something with it. Yes, there was the fear for the future, but I realized, don't fear the future that's yet to be written. Approach it and deal with it every single day and just live through life in a true, genuine way without trying to do harm for others. Harm may happen. When I came out, that harmed others, disappointed people, some happy, some sad. But I had, there's shame associated with that too. So you've got to deal with that. There's guilt, the person that you're coming out to, if they're your partner and they have no inkling, it's like dropping 600 pounds of bricks on their head. I've had maybe months or years to think about it, and they have a microsecond to process it. So you just have to work through what that whole thought process is and what serves you best, because you're the one, again, you control your thoughts and how you live and your body. So how do you want to be as a kind, caring, compassionate, understanding individual, even though there may be some pain involved in the process?
Yeah. And, that's, I can think about how the fear, I can see how the fear of destroying the family, the shame, the guilt surrounding, just being gay, because it doesn't matter if you choose to be homophobic, but just because we are in a society, you subconsciously absorb you subconsciously absorb those, that those discriminatory beliefs, those, and that's something that I've realized as I've, this is something that has brought me face to face with a lot of my subconscious homophobia, just because, for the however many years I've been running a community that does have a disproportionately large, audience of and community of gay men. And so it showed me how there are some ways that in some of my responses or in some of my internal responses to things, I'm like, oh, that, where does that come from? What's the why? Why do I feel that strongly or that angrily toward that response? And just through conversations that I've had with myself, and just getting curious about my own thoughts and my own beliefs, realized, oh, there's a subconscious level of homophobia that I've absorbed just from growing up in society, playing sports. As a kid, not wanting to be labeled as gay myself, not wanting to feel, because I think what also comes with that is this feeling of inferiority, right? It's like, it's a put down. It's not something that, it's something that people have to, I don't know. I'm speaking for a different, demographic, but it's not something that is typically thought of as a positive, in our society. And there's one thing that I can remember being back in college, and I always believed that coming out had to be something that someone did. Like you couldn't just like it had to be this big event, right? And so I remember I had a roommate in college who basically said something to me that happened that was his way of telling me like, oh yeah, I'm gay, right? And for a while I look back at that event and I thought, oh, he's coming out to me. And then I also started to question like, well, why did he have to come out to me to be like, why did he have to do that to begin? Like, why did, like it's like this thing that is expected of gay men that they have to come out. It's not just, oh no, this guy's gay. Like you don't have to ask. You have to have someone confirm and tell you that they're gay. That was just some of, those are some of my experiences that I've had and things that I felt worth sharing as this fits into this conversation.
And I can understand that of the homophobia. I had it as well. I remember thinking to myself when I was in denial, when someone would talk about, the gay lifestyle, which there is no lifestyle,
right.
But the gay lifestyle, I'd say
political choices.
Exactly. I'd say as long as they, live their life and don't thrust it upon me, I'm okay with that. Well, that was my homophobic response to my own thoughts to try to keep myself from accepting that I was gay indeed. It was to pivot and shift to do that. It's interesting. I have no data to back this up, but anecdotally, it seems like sometimes some of the biggest and loudest anti-gay individuals may end up being gay or not straight themselves. And that's just their defensive mechanism to do that because they have some shame in their culture. They don't want to be that way, or that they don't feel that they can accept because of where they are in life. And they think that there's too much that would be damaged, which is really sad because to your point, why should somebody have to come out? I tell people that I coach, you don't have to come out to anybody. I don't remember where I heard this. I did not come up with this, but let people into your life, let them in. So in this case, I would say the roommate felt such a relationship with you as a friend that they valued it be important to be honest and true in the friendship to say, I'm gay or I'm not straight, whatever the situation was. And therefore it helped them be in a better friendship with you and to test the waters to see how you react. If there was going to be something that's going to happen negative, rather find out sooner rather than later. I to this day, if it's not already known, work into the conversation somewhere if I feel it's important based on the ongoing relationship. Because if it's going to be a hard thing for them to overcome and deal with, I'm probably going to move on. Why spend the effort and time if it's going to cause me a lot of negative energy and angst on myself? I used to in the business world, I was a senior leader in a company, and I wore a little pride flash, not a flag, but just the colors here on my lapel, which was one way to telegraph to the world. And I remember it was actually a former podcast guest on Authentically with David said, "Man, I couldn't believe you used to do that. It took so much courage. I can't do that in my company." He'd been out longer than I had. He'd had a partner. He'd raised his kids with his other man, but he just didn't have the courage to do that because he felt there'd be too many negatives in his business life that he'd lose customers and clients. Once he was on the show, that was kind of his way to get over that anxiety, because he went public on a podcast and said I could release it. It took away all that anxiety he had, and it didn't hurt his business. People didn't care. They hired him for his skill and competency, not for his sexuality. Just like, we don't hire you in Mindful Yoga because your hair color. We hire you because you help us, build and control our body and part of a community of like-minded people that are looking to better themselves.
Yeah. I mean, I've had, when we've hosted our Be the Better You retreats, this is where we get, anywhere from 12 to this next one's going to have 17, but we get, a small group of men together and we have very, meaningful, conversations with depth that you aren't able to have without being in this kind of environment. And, when you look around at the demographics there, again, I think it's about 1/3, close to 1/2 gay men. And something that, the experiences that I've heard from those guys, there was one guy in particular who said that he went to a business conference. I think he works in finance, and he mentioned that he had a partner, and there were people there was one guy, I think in particular, who reacted negatively to it and was kind of standoffish, and so that's taught him to be very very selective about who he talks with. I think I've also seen it's also created this unwillingness of men to interact with other groups of men. So I'll use the word funny, but there's a lot of guys who are interested in coming to Manful Yoga events, and they're like, well, I don't normally go to groups with other men. And I'm like, oh yeah, no. This is like, you'll be fine. Because I have because I think they have this idea in their mind that like, oh, it's going to be a bunch of like, straight jacked guys in their 30s like Dean. And I'm like, no, not really.
yeah. Not your demographics for your members.
Yeah. Like, our demographics are 40, 50, 60. And, we don't have a survey question. We don't ask you to choose your sexuality when you sign up, but
Nor should you.
we'd have to, we've joked about making like a different type of question that would like, it's a bad joke. No, it's a joke. I think it's funny, but making a joke, like how do you ask someone they're gay without asking they're gay specifically, right? Just make some sort of question that fits in line with. Anyway, I've said too much, but anyways, we don't have a question like that, obviously. But if we had to guess, we're looking at minimum 20% and upwards of 40, 50%. You don't know. So, anyways, I think there is this general reluctance. There definitely is this general reluctance of men to share that they are gay with other groups of men. Is my point.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing that came to mind when you were talking there, if the percentage is that high from the LGBTQ plus community as members of Manflow, what's their motivation? Is it because they are like-minded and just want to be physically fit, or is there some pressure from their being included in their community and they want to continue to look healthy and vital? And so therefore fitness is a focus, and they find that way, to help them in that way.
Yeah.
I'll admit that. It's that I came out at 58 or 59, somewhere around there. And I was approaching my 60th birthday, and I had decided in working with you and Jesse, I wanted to be in my best shape ever at 60. I had just come out. I was thinking that way. And so it was that I've made this big change in my life. I want to be around for it. I want to be experiencing it. I don't want to be sitting by myself wherever I end up living going, woe is me, but I wanted to be active and vital, to be able to jump on my bike, do social things with people, engage with my family and kids too. I still have children and still have a family. So you don't want to stay healthy and active for them as well. But I would think, to be honest, if I'm honest, try to be, is that my sexuality and that pivot of acceptance also was reflected in why I wanted to be more fit and active as well. You want to be attractive. You want to be desirable. You want people to look at you and say, I want to meet that person, even for friends. Because when I came out, it wasn't just, I lost friends. I lost, a lifetime of connections. Some people still to this day won't return my texts or phone calls because I disappointed them in my decision to accept the gay lifestyle, to choose to be gay. You don't choose to be gay. You choose to accept yourself.
Because it's so easy. Why wouldn't you choose?
Why would somebody who has to, in their mind, fight for everything and be defensive or try not to be defensive? Why would you choose to take that course of action if I could just sit back and keep everything the way it was? I got so deep, dark, depressed, driving to work, crying my eyes out, listening to podcasts in the car, not reading my Kindle, but I had all these books on my Kindle about coming out and what that meant and how to process it. And I remember driving across this bridge, across this river on the way to work, just hoping a truck would come and knock my car off over the bridge and kill me, just to be done with it. Because there was so much depression and anxiety. And that's when I decided I just have to, accept myself and tell those that need to know as we go forward. Yeah.
So it eventually got to a point where you couldn't hold it in anymore.
I could not. Yeah. I could not. And my wife had no idea what was going on. She knew something was going on, but I didn't have the courage to tell her until I finally came out to her and told her, and she had no inkling, no idea at all.
Yeah. That's the part that, that's scary to me in some ways, in the sense that, it can just, people without knowing, right, just had no idea. But I also go back to thinking about, and this is the next question I want to ask you, is what were the, I mean, there's a bunch of questions here, but like, what were the early indicators, or how did you just get through life without acknowledging those things? How did you also, how were you and your wife able to have a deep connection and have kids? I mean, I get it. Not as, not all couples are as deeply connected as others, but, at the same time, for Marissa, for example, like if I come home and I didn't do the dishes like she wanted me to, or if like I forgot to do something that she wanted me to, she looks at me, she sees my eyes, and she's like, "What did you do?" I'm like, she knows. Like, there's nothing that I can hide from her. And so it makes me think about, like people in your situation. Like how did that just,
in my case, I had done nothing, so there was nothing to be guilty of. So there's nothing to see in my eyes.
Yeah.
All it was my thoughts. And I had those thoughts, and I used to fool myself that those were just normal thoughts, that all guys had these thoughts. You genuinely fell in love with this woman. You had a great dating relationship. We had a great marriage, fell in love, had 2 beautiful children. I was in the military almost 30 years. We moved around the world. We were there together. We had a great life, good extended family. It was all positive. There was nothing negative in that, but these thoughts kept popping up in my head about my sexuality. And now there's a therapist, I think he's Wisconsin or Michigan, Joe Court, and there's the Joe Court test, which there's some shame in actually saying this out loud. When you walk onto a beach, everyone's there, men, women, children, all dressed for the beach. Where do your eyes go? My eyes would go to the men. I was attracted to my wife, loved my wife, but my eyes would go to the men at large. And that kept coming back in my head once I heard him say that, and said, ooh, if that's the way I'm programmed, that's the way I was designed, my design specification, that I'm perspective towards men more than women. So then I thought, am I bisexual? I am not. And I believe in bisexuality. Some think it's just a stepping stone to being gay or lesbian, but I believe in bisexuality. And so for me, it was just keeping those thoughts in my head. And I used to tell people I had a 3-foot mask that I would wear. I'm a much different personality in the way I speak and interact with people. If you've done the Myers-Briggs personality test, I was an INTJ, a very introverted person who'd rather stand behind the plant at a party, and if it worked, as a checklist to get things done and get it done. I realized that personality that I was presenting to people was my cover to get through life and get the respect and honor as a human being for getting stuff done. I was driven to get stuff done. I'm the guy that would work on the weekend at my job just to keep ahead of the game to do that. And really, I'm more of an ENFP, an extroverted guy who'd rather give you a hug and hear about your life personal story and how I can help you. Is who I truly am at my core. But that was all covered with all this shame and guilt and a way of being that really wasn't me. But that's what I did to cope, to get through life. Because I was always held to a high standard from the moment I was born, all through school of, you're going to do well, you're going to succeed. And I was driven. I had opportunity. I took advantage. And that's why I ended up being, I'm a retired Air Force general, brigadier general. It's just go, go, go.
Yeah. So this was so you basically used your checklist and your to-do list and just getting things done as a coping mechanism to deal with those thoughts.
Well, and also to get validation as a human being, because I would get validation and I would get that, the satisfaction of being successful, because deep down, that wasn't an option of not to be.
Did you ever slow down enough, or did you ever, finish a significant portion of your to-do list and did you feel those thoughts coming more as you had more mental space? Or
I would say there's lots of things. In the military I was in before Don't Ask, Don't Tell, where you always feared of a lifestyle polygraph where they put the strap across your chest and ask you questions and see how the polygraph goes on some positions. So there was that fear. They used to ask 3 questions every time your security clearance came up. Are you a communist? Are you a member of an organization that would advocate the overthrow of the U.S. government or Constitution? Are you homosexual? All 3 of those had to be a no. And if there was doubt, then you were subject to, well, let's ask you more questions, put on a polygraph, and go from there. They don't do that now, I understand. But that was always there.
There's only the second question now, I think. I don't think communism is... I'm serious. I think I've gone through the screening process in a different life. And I think the only question that I was asked was, are you an advocate of the violent overthrow of the United States government or whatever those...
You remember the question more correctly than I did, but yes.
Yes, something like that.
Yeah. In your
I don't
your previous life, I remember that.
Yes.
We've been in some of the same countries, actually. So that came up. And so there was that part of it, that kind of kept it down. And then by the time that you and I met in 2016, we'd had a few phone calls now and then. I was no longer in active duty. I'd retired in 2011. Don't Ask, Don't Tell ended in that same year. But I still had not accepted who I was. I was no longer a senior executive of the Defense Department because I went back as a civilian and did that. I was now working in a university. And so the different culture, different climate, kids were out of the house in college. So lots of things in life had changed. So I wasn't surrounded by that military pressure that I had before. I didn't have a security clearance anymore. So I didn't get those questions, even though the questions had changed. But that was gone. And I had more time to think and relax, actually, and live life and be introspective. In some ways, the guilt there is that should have been the time to really then double down and enrich the relationship I was in. But I could not get past the fact of the thoughts that coming back of who I really was. And I didn't feel I could live with those thoughts in close communion with my spouse, and I'd be dishonest, and I just couldn't do that. So I had to be honest.
Yeah.
So being honest, I knew it was going to cause pain and hurt, but I still felt it was best to be honest because I couldn't continue. Again, I wanted that truck to hit my car and knock me over the bridge into the ravine.
Yeah, which I think is worth mentioning because you'd rather get hit by a truck than come out. I mean... Yeah,
well, and unfortunately, people kill themselves. I've had listeners who I have spent time with on the phone, and I do have a therapist, that said they did not kill themselves because they heard the stories of others and they realized that they were not so strange and unique, that they were struggling with the same thing that other guys were struggling with. And this is of all ages. It's a common theme that comes up is that not living seems easier at the moment than living your true self, being true, or living in deception, would be the alternative there. But all it does is move the problem to somebody else. It doesn't solve it at all. And so I'll pause here a second. There is a national suicide hotline, 988. You still dial that on your cell phone, 988, and you immediately get connected to the National Suicide Hotline for mental health reasons. And if you're a veteran, dial 9881, and you get someone who is connected to veterans resources as well to do that. And when I work with clients, one of the first questions I have is, do you have a therapist? Depending on where they are, because I don't do something that a therapist does. I work with people that want to excel, but not somebody who's working through trauma that may be the basis of what their issues are.
Yeah. Well, that's good that you're not the life coach that says, I can also heal your trauma. Because that is a different,
No, I've spent complimentary consultation calls where I felt that I was not the right fit and they needed to talk to a therapist and they had not. So we bring up the Psychology Today website, start putting in where they live and the filters. And that becomes then the coaching session is the takeaway task is, what are 4 or 5 therapists that you feel comfortable contacting tomorrow to see if you can, engage with them and whether they can help you through what you're working through.
That's interesting. I've used the same, different coaching session, but same tactic. I'm like, you seeing somebody, because it sounds like you got a lot going on. So Psychology Today. Anyways, Psychology Today.
.com. Yeah.
Yes. And the other thing I was thinking is, so you mentioned, obviously, were you in the military your entire life? Did you do?
Yeah. In college ROTC, and then full career, almost 30 years.
Okay. So started in ROTC. And so being in the military, obviously that's like one community where, this would not be as accepted. And then you're also curious about where you grew up and what was the environment and the community and the values which you grew up in.
Yeah, small Midwestern town, Newton, Iowa. It was the home of Maytag when Maytag had production and executive offices and those types of things. It was in a small town. But I was born in 1959, grew up there in the 60s and 70s. You just didn't identify as being homosexual. For one, in the DSM, that's the Diagnostic Manual for Psychologists and Psychiatrists, homosexuality was listed as a mental illness until 1970. It's in the 70s, early 70s. And so you were mentally ill, which could mean all sorts of things and all types of actions. And then in the military, if you recall from the Eisenhower administration in the 50s forward, there's something called the Lavender Scare. At the same time, there was the Red Scare, hence the your communist question. But the homosexual question came from the Lavender Scare, where if you were considered to be homosexual, of course, you'd have to be closeted because it was a mental illness, and therefore you were compromisable, and therefore you put the country at risk because they could say, oh, we know this guy's queer, therefore we're going to use it against him to get information and compromise him. So that was the rationale for that. But so the culture of the small town, to your point, was I had one friend that I assume was gay. I found out recently, I actually verified he's now died of AIDS. I found out, I believe so, that he was gay, but he never told me. We used to hang out and we were friends, and, we were connected as human beings, but just as emotional friends in that way. So there wasn't there weren't role models. There was nothing to do. And when you did see gay represented things on television, it was usually like there's a comedian who might dress in drag or would just speak so very sassy, that would be kind of stereotypical, like a Paul Lynde or something like that. And you hear negative comments from those in the inner circle of life, relatives or friends, of how that was like, oh, that's disgusting, or that's strange, or, that's cute, but I'm sure glad that there's nobody around here like that, types of things. Just a small community. Yeah.
It just made me think of the Sweet Home Alabama movie. The one guy. Anyways, random thought. But yeah, it's so when your only exposure to being gay is the stereotypical generalization or overly dramatic descriptions that you see on TV, or when you're hearing about it described negatively within your community, then what does that mean when you experience those thoughts yourself?
Oh, in those times?
Yeah. So if that's the background, right? If that's if that's your background growing up, and you have gay thoughts, and like, what's the how do you...
can't be me, because how people react to those folks. A lot of times, even the situation comedy, the butt of the jokes might be we'll say the flamboyant character that never said gay, but there was that flamboyant, that strange uncle, that the comic relief person that has some mannerisms that aren't straight heterosexual normative, they're not masculine. Well, what's masculine? That gets into a whole nother, what masculine is and toxic masculinity.
Yeah, I remember, just touching on the masculine thing. I think just again, going back to some of those subconscious beliefs that you just absorbed from society, I think I grew up just thinking masculinity is superior. And so the way that I become better is by adopting as many masculine behaviors as possible and looking down on feminine behaviors. I think a much more productive way of thinking about it is by taking away the gender association with feminine and masculine and thinking more about, the comparison or the metaphor of the ship and the sea, or yin and yang, or, something like that. And so that now there's no connotation attached to, oh, I'm a man, so I want to be more masculine, or I'm a woman, so I want to be more feminine, and then I'll be better as a woman or better as a man. Anyways, made me think about that. So you're growing up in this environment where you cannot be yourself. How did that evolve as you got older and you had kids and you were a more independent adult?
Well, the thoughts were still there, and as I said earlier, I just thought it was normal, just normal thinking. Since I had found a life that suited me well. Yeah. Marriage, children, family. But in retrospect, now I understand why I really wasn't successful at dating in high school. I had really one girlfriend and she chose me. So she's the one that took the initiative. And in college, it was the same way. I really didn't date anyone. I had a couple, but they were more of, you needed to have a date to go to some event. So there was no girlfriend there. So all these things of the past became more apparent when I accepted myself and looked back in time and say, oh, that's why this and this and this. And that's why I'd rather be doing this than that. Even though just, kind of swim along through life. Yeah. Okay. Got it. So how often did the thoughts come up? Was this like a daily occurrence? Was it when you noticed, once a week or every few weeks when you had this, I would say when I was married and focused on marriage and family, and I was happy and full of joy. They weren't that often. I was focused on, us as a couple and a family and my military career. What's the next assignment? What's this assignment? Trying to get pregnant. Having kids, working through all that, and then moving with kids and new schools and, being the soccer parent to watch your kids out there on the pitch and scout leader. All so life gets busy. And so that, if anything, keeps me occupied in a positive way to focus on the family, which was important and responsible. And it's what I wanted to do as well. It was after those types of things diminished, then the mind had more free time. You'll experience this later on when your children are up. You'll have more free time and get back to the things that aren't focused on those family activities and to grow the family because they're now on their own. They're living their own life. So now you're supporting cast members, a parent, and, living with your spouse and going to that next level, in the relationship. And again, unfortunate for my spouse at the time is that my mind was now thinking about things that I had consciously or unconsciously suppressed and chose not to deal with, and got to the point where the depression took over. Towards literally one day, we had a walk-in closet and I was in the fetal position on the floor in the dark going, what do I do? It was just, it was horrible. It was just horrible. Yeah.
I can imagine that'd be, for someone like yourself who's so, I guess I'm just, I'm drawing the parallel to myself. If as someone who is also very success oriented and very, feels very in control a lot of the time, getting into a situation like that, where you just feel so out of control, I can imagine, and I can understand that that's not only a situation where you haven't been in before, where you feel this huge lack of control, but also, just not being able to handle it and having the response that you did.
Yeah, being in control was my thing. That was my MO. I mean, I felt in the family I was to be the stable rock, as well as in my job. I was a lot of times a unit commander or a senior leader, and therefore I was to be in control and not show vulnerability or uncertainty, because my job was to lead and inspire. And how can you do that if folks are trembling around you because you're unsure?
Yeah.
I don't have the answers. My job actually was to be present and mentor those that had the answers, but they would be better served if I appeared to be strong and grounded.
Yeah. So you were just so dedicated to your purpose there that you were able to block out this whole side of you.
Yeah. Well, had I dealt with that side of me while I was in my career, for most of my career, it would have ended it instantly.
Right.
Would have stopped, which then now I've got a family who's depending on me for income and for retirement afterwards and college and all those things. And if, let's say I was halfway through my career and say, I'm really gay, would stop instantly.
All right.
Those days. Interestingly, one of my fears was, as a unit commander, thank God this never happened, I was always afraid that someone would come to me and make an allegation that someone was homosexual, because I had an obligation to then hear that and then make sure that was sufficiently and appropriately investigated. You would think that would be a signal to why you had this fear that this is going to happen. That was my own self, I look at it now, that's the way I believe, is my own self had that same fear, not only for others. And then I had people in my units. There was one guy, very attractive man, athletic, fit. I mean, you look at him and say, man, he's gorgeous. Why didn't he have a girl on his arm? Coming to events. Why don't I hear about the girlfriend? Well, once the don't ask, don't tell and all that changed, and it's okay to be out in the military, he has a husband and he has a son. They adopted together and have a beautiful career. And he's reached the senior rank himself. But he couldn't live his true life in the way that he needed to and wanted to.
Yeah.
But for me, it would have been everything based on where I was generationally compared to him.
Yeah. In that situation where you have two kids, where you're, the leader of your unit, you're in a situation where you would not be willing to prioritize yourself. And then, so now kind of tell me about what happened after you, especially as you got near toward the end of your military career, as you get in your late 50s, maybe, and the kids are out. Now it's just you and your wife. And, it just became uncomfortable to be with her. Sorry. And I know this is like, I'm walking you back through things that you probably are very uncomfortable. So I appreciate you doing it with me. I've had some people describe this podcast as walking someone through a therapy session. Yes, I like to publicize your worst fears and anxieties and conversation medium. But yeah, could you tell me about that at that time period?
So again, I was no longer in a government job. I was working in a place where I had more mental time, and the kids were out of the house, going to college. And the thoughts just kept coming back in my mind. And how did you frame your question again?
Yeah. So, so you had this first period of your life where you were, you just shut the thoughts out. And then you had the second period of your life where you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s. You've got kids. They're a priority. You're focusing on your success. You're focusing on your responsibilities as a leader, your role as a father. But then once you get out of those roles and now you're not as active as a parent and you have more time, you have more mental space, and you're no longer working with an organization where you're not allowed to be what you are. Now, how did that start to come out more? And those thoughts became more, pervasive. They became harder to ignore. Just kind of tell me about that situation.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. There was a moment which, it is embarrassing to say this, but I've said it on another podcast, so I'll say it again. I was on a business trip and was sitting, it was in Key West, Florida, which has a large gay population. And I think the business trip was in May. So it's near pride events and activities that kind of shift around the country depending on weather when they have their little pride events or things. And was sitting on this patio having a brunch or lunch, and beautiful sunny day, and this little parade goes by, and it's folks waving pride flags, and they're having fun, and they look like so relaxed. And I remember sitting there going, ooh, I wish I was down there with them walking the street right now. That was the first time it really hit me. And that was maybe 20, 17, 18, somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. It really hit me, and that got my mind going. And then I found podcasts like Graying Rainbows, which is no longer produced, but it's still out there. Dr. Ginger Campbell, she was a VA MD, and she has other podcasts which have actually won lots of awards on brain science. Mm-hmm. And listen to her podcasts, and just every time there's a new episode, I'd just chew those up, and I'd cry driving to work, which then got me into books on my Kindle, because a Kindle's a safe space. You don't know what's on my Kindle, but if I carry a book, you can see it. Yeah. Or you go to a bookstore, somebody's going to see me pick up a book, and what are they going to think? Mm-hmm. So you're doing everything on the down low, still not doing anything physically. Never, never, never. I was married, so I was going to honor the marriage, 100%. Honor the vows. Read a lot of books, listen to podcasts, and didn't talk to anybody else. It was all in my head. Mm-hmm. And then later on in that journey, I was at a conference in Florida, Orlando, actually, sitting in the audience, and it was boring. Oh my God, it was boring. It's one of those where you could give all of the lectures yourself, but you were paid to go there. Mm-hmm. So I went into this taking notes and had my Kindle, of course. And that's when I went back to the hotel room that night and looked in the mirror and just said, David Cotton, you're a gay man. Came out to myself. That's the first step. And what's interesting, another guest on my show, she did a small study of men that came out later in life, most in their 50s. Then the mirror was a device that many of us use. We looked in a mirror to look ourselves in the eye and to state our truth out loud with nobody else in the room. And then from that point, it was, okay, now that I've done this, now what do I do? Who do I tell? And so in my case, a friend had come out 20 years before me. And he also was a coach on the side, had been. And so I'm at my house, crouched down outside with the wind blowing. I was raking leaves or something, and I call him on the phone to just tell him, I came out to him. And then he helped me through how to deal with that and how to process it. What I thought was interesting, he said, I thought you were gay 20 some odd years ago. And that's why whenever you were in the area where he lived, that's why I avoided you. Because I didn't want to disrupt your life. I thought, wow, how did he know? But he did. He just sensed it. Yeah. So then coming out to my spouse, that was very impactful, negative, devastating, I guess, my characterization of it, because she didn't have any idea. For the kids, they were accepting. One of the children cried and left the space, but found out later it's because we were the last parents of the friend group that were still married. So they agreed that their parent would be divorced. And the other gave me a big hug. And then later, one of them came out themselves.
Wow. Yeah.
And I sensed there that one then felt comfortable because of the vulnerability I presented. Yeah. They felt comfortable to be themselves. And therefore, I would say to their lifetime advantage, they now get to pursue their life in the way that they feel serves them best and not have to be burdened by what I did for my generation. But even though there's even people that are young today that have those same feelings that I had, even though I was born 59, coming out at age 58, 59, but there's folks that are born in the last 20 years that feel that same pressure. That's why we have the Trevor Project, where it's a great source for anyone to call, but youth for sure, that if they're struggling with those thoughts and how they deal with them and interact with their family, they can go to the Trevor Project. It's even cool on their web browser. I forget they even have a key that you just tap on your keyboard and it makes your screen go blank. So if somebody walks in the room that you don't want to show somebody that you're looking at the Trevor Project website, it'll immediately go away. And they have counselors. A friend of mine here in Palm Springs actually does phone counseling for folks. And it's sad to say, but he's had people who have, committed suicide mid-call because that person is so depressed. I used to be the member of an organization. We give out scholarships for kids that advocated for equality and inclusion in their small Iowa community. And someone come out or transition, but they'd be disowned by their family. So they'd show up for the awards breakfast with a school counselor or a friend because the family had said, that's not us, you're out. So it still happens today. It's not just my generation. It's still happening today. Acceptance.
Yeah. So sad.
Which is why I'm so vocal now too. I just like the podcast. We don't monetize it. We don't put ads. We just provide it as a service just to get the information out there. We want people to know that they're not unique, that there is a community and they can get through it. It may not seem like it today, but you really can. You've got to do the work. It's not easy. It's just like a workout. Your muscles are going to hurt the next day. Your brain's going to hurt as you go through it. You're going to have some uncomfortable decisions to make, some conscious conversations, but you can come through this, whatever your age is and stage of life. And some choose just to live the life they're in because they feel that serves them better than coming out or letting somebody in. They said, well, I value too much what I'm doing today, so I'll just live the way I have been.
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely spoken with people in that situation as well. They're like, well, this is just the reality and doing the best that I can without, doing the
And there's organizations that do that. There's one called Husbands Out to Wives, HOW. And in many of those cases, they attempt to stay, many of them, in union with their spouse and then figure out how to live as a gay or bisexual man married to a woman, in this case, that is straight. How do they navigate that?
Yeah. Well, I have two more questions, and then I want to, I do want to do a follow-up interview, and I'd love to hear about the stories of the men that, you're having on your podcast and that, to what extent you can disclose coaching. But, looking back at your 30s, your 40s, were you happy?
Oh, yeah. I was just giddy. I was thrilled. I mean, I've got a lovely woman that's my wife, and I'm in love with her. We've got, kids. It was hard to have them. We had them. You get all those fun times. I mean, I go back and, you just can't take those memories away, which I'm glad they're still there, of holding them in their arms, or as I said, sitting on the soccer field, watching them play, or, their developmental, the first step, them being successful, and even the tears and all those things that, as being a dad. I mean, being a dad was a fantastic thing, and I enjoy it today. Yeah. So, I was happy. I had friends, family. Well, some would say, well, you had everything in the world that most don't have. Why do you need more? Well, it wasn't needing more. I wasn't true to myself. And I had to, before I died, I had to be true to myself. I had to live honestly. When I came out to my mother, my father had already passed. I'm curious what our conversation would have been. I believe he'd be totally supportive just by the type of person that he was. My mother said, though, oh, David, what did your father and I do that didn't allow you to feel you could be yourself? I said, it wasn't you at all. I said, if anything, you guys were the example of how to be yourself and accepting. It was me and the way I felt in the society and culture that I was growing up in. So it wasn't you at all. It was me. Yeah.
Okay. And then my last question is kind of the obvious one, but you were attracted to your wife this entire time.
Yeah, truly was. Yeah. Gorgeous woman, beautiful. I can remember what she wore to the first date, which is a blind date on the 4th of July to go to the fireworks, You can see the top and the shorts and just,
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, thank you for answering all my random questions and having this great conversation. I'm looking forward to doing another one. Also want to make sure that people know about. So we'll list all the resources that we mentioned in this episode, but I also want to, specifically ask you, where can people listen to Out Late with David and anything else that you're working on?
Well, on their phone or their whatever device they use, go to their podcasting platform and just look up Out Late with David and it'll pop up. Or you can go to outlatewithdavid.com And that has a link to all of the shows. We have a YouTube channel. You can get to the YouTube channel as well. The current episode is available directly on that site. There's also links to my coaching, or if they go to davidcotton.com, that gets you to my coaching site, where it tells more about me, and links to if you want to set up a complimentary consultation. And I do lots of those, talk people through some initial stages. Like I said, sometimes it's helping them find resources through Psychology Today, to do that, or to see what their journey is or what their needs are. And when I coach, it's not just on coming out or not. I have the spectrum of folks that want to change in their life, not dysfunction. A therapist gets dysfunction to function. I take you from here to, you want something more in your life that's not there. What is that? But davidcotton.com and outlatewithdavid.com.
Okay. Great. All right. Well, David, it's good to catch up. Good to see you again. Yes. Different guy than I've seen on the videos in the past, for sure. Yeah. I mean, totally. But like you mentioned, totally different person.
We've both grown. We've both taken advantage of life and have made good things out of it. And I want to thank you for helping so many people that you don't even know. Again, I remember watching you on YouTube, trying not to stand on the acorns, how doing poses in Texas, from what you have today. And when you'd call me occasionally when I was working at that university, just to check in, say, how's Manflow Yoga going? I just want to get wow, this guy really cares about his business. He is going the extra mile to reach out and do random calls to his followers.
Yes, I remember that. I used to do drives and I would do random calls to people. I would just go through my contact list and I'd call phone numbers. I don't do that anymore. So if you're listening and expecting a random call from me, I haven't done that in a long time. So please don't expect a random call from me.
Then the launch for your first book, that was all fun.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I appreciate it. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope it inspires you to be a better man, whatever that means for you. And I'll see you on the next one. Thanks again, David.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, guys. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode. Again, everything from that we discussed in this episode is going to be in the show notes. So look for links in there. I encourage you to check out David's podcast if you want to hear more of these stories. Again, that's called Out Late with David. If you're enjoying this podcast, by the way, please leave a review wherever you listen. Leave a 5-star review. Say something nice. I'd really appreciate it. If you have any desire to learn more about Manflow Yoga and me, what I do with Manflow Yoga, check out our free 7-day trial. You can sign up at any time at manflowyoga.com/join. We also have a free 7-day challenge, which you can learn more about. Totally free, no credit card required, at manflowyoga.com/7DC. That's what I've got for you today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Apologies if I wasn't my usual self. Again, going through some stuff with Kaya passing away recently. And that's it. So I hope to see you guys on the next episode. I hope it inspires you to be a better man.
If this conversation resonated with you, I want you to know you're not alone. That's exactly why Outlay with David exists, to create a space for honest stories, courageous conversations, and the reminder that authenticity can be worth the cost. If you're navigating your own coming out, redefining a relationship, or simply asking yourself what it would mean to live more fully, I invite you to explore more episodes here on this podcast. And if you're looking for deeper, more personalized support as you navigate change, I also offer one-on-one coaching for individuals who are ready to step into a more authentic, aligned next chapter. You can learn more at davidcottoncoaching.com. If this episode spoke to you, consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear it. It's never too late. Thank you for listening, and thank you to Dean Pullman for being on his show, and I'll see you next time on Out Late with David. As a life coach, I'm committed to help you discover the passions in your life and help you map a course to achieve the things you really want. Together, we will unwind those persistent self-doubts that are holding you back. You'll begin to see your passions more clearly and set achievable goals. Throughout your journey, I'll be there to challenge and encourage you in moving forward to discover your authentic self. For more information about my personal life coaching services, or to arrange a complimentary consultation, visit davidcottoncoaching.com.
You're listening to Out Late with David.
To find all episodes and resources for coming out later in life, visit outlatewithdavid.com. That's outlatewithdavid.com, your go-to source for inspiration, support, and real stories.
To hear more episodes, visit outlatewithdavid.com. And to learn more about personal life coaching services, go to davidcottoncoaching.com.